I grew up on Long Island. My mom was a native of Port Washington, never went to college. And my dad actually grew up in a coal mining town, where they film The Office now, Scranton, PA. He actually went to Plains High School, which is no longer there. If you've been to that area, it's still fairly economically depressed. Great Italian food, but it's not like a great place to have grown up. And my dad's father was a coal miner. Now, if you have families or ancestors that were coal miners, it is one of the worst jobs that you could possibly imagine. Effectively, northern slavery. It's a coal mining town. My dad turned 17, he graduated from high school, and my grandfather insisted that he responded to an ad to mine sand on Long Island. So he bought a used car, drove out to Long Island, to the town of Port Washington. You all know probably the geological history of Long Island, but it's just basically a glacial deposit. The largest sand mine in North America was in that town, and it took 94 years to mine that sand. 70% of the concrete that built New York City came from that sand. Okay, so my dad started there in '53. He served in the American military for 3 years. But other than that stint, he worked for the same company. Think about America today versus America that we grew up in. He worked for the same company for 42 years. Okay, and he left that company maybe 10 years ago. And never went to college. Mom never went to college. He ruled that family with an iron fist, the guy. Okay, iron fist. Now they go to church every Sunday now, but I'm going to make a confession here. My family were not churchgoers in the early part of my life. In fact, the catechism or the religious training that I got came on a Wednesday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon when the public school let the Catholic kids out. We boarded the bus and beat each other up on the bus on the way over to see the nuns.
That's vicious.
The nuns in my town, they looked at you and said, this kid's in this kid's in private school. We're going to in public school, we're going to whack him around a little bit. Okay, so they would try to take, Jerry's laughing, they would try to take out the full weeks of corporal punishment on us in about an hour and a half. That's how we learned. And I'll tell you, I can remember, is it okay to tell the story? I can remember, okay. But this is a true story, and I can almost feel my heart racing, okay? Father Dobson was a classic old-style priest. So I'm in the 5th grade. I have not gone to church for probably 3 years. Not gone to church. I got my Holy Communion. 3 years later, I'm in the 5th grade. I haven't gone to church, but I'm going to this Wednesday catechism. So it's the afternoon. They decide they're going to have a confession. So I'm getting a whole list of things I'm supposed to say, all the curse words, everything I did bad, right? I get into the confessional. Bless me, Father, for I've sinned. He says, when's the last time you were at Mass? 3 years ago, sir. He went ballistic. I can feel the confession. Crazy. I'm going straight to H-E-L-L. Are you a 2 million Hail Marys, 700,000, Our Fathers? He went nuts on me, okay? And he said, why are you not doing that? I said, well, I don't have a car. My parents don't take me to church. And he's like, you got to go. Where do you live? I told him where I live. He goes, you're a half a mile from this church. You got to get to church on a Sunday. You got to get to church. I came out of that confession. My heart was pounding. I got on my knees and said, God, please, I really don't want to go to hell. And I went to church every Sunday from that into my high school graduation. Okay, and I missed a few. Okay, so that is absolutely. I didn't put that in my book, but that was. He scared the daylights out of me.
So what do you think about that now? I mean, as a grown man, that's one way to find faith. I mean, did you kind of go through a period where you said, well, forget this, once you're out, you go to college, you're off the Tufts, and sort of, the world of ideas, did you say, this silly or what?
Well, how many people in here have felt the test of faith? and it said, geez, is there a God, and do I feel faithful? And even Mother Teresa writes about that in her diary. So what ends up happening is you go to college, okay, and you're in this like classically liberal world, and you're learning about atheism and philosophy and other religions, and then you have to make a decision for yourself. You have to say, okay, did that man come out of that cave? Did he come out of that cave? And why do I think he came out of the cave? And let's say there's 2 billion other people think that he came out of that cave, but there's 7 billion people on the planet, 5 billion of them don't think that he came out of that cave, or don't care. Okay, so what is it about that cave and that experience and that man? See, so ultimately, for me, I wrestled with my faith, and I did a lot of reading on the early church. I did a lot of reading about early Christianity and the historical Jesus, and made a decision, and it's really a decision, okay? It's that chasm between your scientific evidence and your belief systems of your 5 senses. And then it's that extra sense that you have about yourself and your intuition that you sometimes can get out of your body and sometimes you cannot. And I just made a decision, I guess I was in my early 20s, after reading so much stuff, that I believed in it. Now, how many people in this room know who Apollonius was? Anybody remember the name Apollonius? Okay, see, it's very interesting. Most people in the room don't know who Apollonius was. He was born 20 years prior to Jesus Christ in Judea. Apollonius, his followers said that he was born of a virgin birth. His followers also said that he created a teaching ministry once he got into his late adulthood, into his early 30s. He was persecuted by the Roman government at the time in Judea, and he was executed. His followers also said that he was resurrected. There's nobody in this room that really knows who he is, right? There were 71 messianic figures. Okay, according to the historian Josephus, there were 71 messianic figures over a 120-year period in Judea.
Josephus being the famous Jewish historian.
Okay, so think about this, okay? But you don't know who Apollonius is. But everybody in this room knows who Jesus Christ is, okay? Now, why? Okay, there's a lot of different reasons, okay? And there's a lot of evidence to support that he actually was risen from the dead, okay? And if you think about the fight in the early Christian church over that fact, okay? Many people don't believe it to be a fact. I do. If you think about that fact, okay, the fight that went on and the contradictions in the stories, okay, this is not like a propaganda piece. There's a lot of contradiction in that story. The struggle with him and Peter, the different things that happened to him when he was flipping over the table. I mean, it's not the most glamorous or super gratifying story. If you were going to come up with a propaganda story, it would be a lot cleaner. Okay, but it isn't. But when you think about it, okay, there was a group of people at that period of time that so stridently believed that they created the church. Now, a little tongue-in-cheek, he had one fantastic PR agent. Okay, and you need to have PR if you're going to figure out who someone is, right? I've learned that from the television. But you think about what St. Paul did. Okay, he moved himself over 35 years into the 4 major cities in that kind of trapezoid, right? He was up into Turkey, he moved into Athens, Rome, back down to Jerusalem, writing letters.
All of which were trade cities.
All of which were trade cities, writing letters, okay, and explaining what he thought to be the truth, right, or to be the way. And if you think about those teachings, and there are some contradictions in the 4 Gospels, but if you think about those teachings, okay, for me it's the voice of God. All right, and what is that message? You got to be good to other people in your life. You just have to make that decision that it's sort of about you, but it's also about everybody else, you know. And I've had moments in my life where I've had to turn to God due to deaths, or I turn to Him every day. Deaths, tragedies, 9/11. Think about it, right? But then, even in my own personal vanity moments, which I write about in this book, I had to turn to God.